right, little sister. The Legion requires fresh blood.
Chad Heffelfinger directs, co-writes and stars in BIFF, the Human Slayer. Now, this, I believe, was originally a web series of around 8 episodes, totaling around about just under an hour of footage, which has been re-edited and put into a kind of film. So you've basically got a film originally made as a web series. At least I think that's what's happened here. So it lasts around just under an hour. So it's not a long movie by any stretch, and is clearly a take on the Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of parody, I guess you want to say. So the focus, as you'd probably expect by that title, is on a vampire. Now we have Biff, who is a kind of vampire who wants to try and be less demonic, shall we say, and try and not kill humans quite as much. He does turn this guy at the beginning of the movie, and we follow that character as he kind of transitions into becoming a kind of a vampire. He's actually a vegetarian, and then we have interactions with different humans, all of whom are very hostile towards vampires. In this world, you know, this town very much likes Sunnydale, knows that there's kind of stuff going on. And even other vampires who might be more nefarious, shall we say. What will happen, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So this is very, very low budget, and obviously you really need to be a fan of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer series to appreciate this, because it is so sort of amateurish and rough around the edges. That being said, let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour. So it is quite a fun concept to see the kind of the roles reversed here, and having effectively the antagonists be the humans and the protagonists be the kind of the vampires, and we kind of follow their journey and the decisions that they are making. Now, it's not the same kind of mythology like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer series, if you've ever seen that, but still, it's kind of a kind of a fun sort of concept here. And the movie is obviously a kind of comedic take, and is as such is lots of kind of like, you know, jokes and references, some of which are, you know, are relatively amusing, I have to say. I wouldn't say it's laugh out loud funny by any stretch, but there's some kind of amusing kind of stuff kind of going on screen here. Now, despite the fact that this is extremely low budget, I've got to say, on a technical level, I was relatively impressed with what they managed to do here. We do have a couple of kind of creature effects, and, you know, it's low tech. It's ultimately a guy in a suit, but we have this swamp monster thing, and they've managed to kind of give him like a articulated mouth, which I think was possibly done with AI, but you know, it doesn't look bad. We kind of got this more sort of Nosferatu looking vampire and stuff. So I kind of quite liked some of the kind of the low budget. You know, it's obviously, I mean, this was made to be a cheap, low budget parody web series initially. So, you know, you've got to bear in mind that the low budget that we are talking here. But I still quite liked it. Even our kind of more human looking vampires, I thought that I liked the idea there where we have some kind of differences between them and stuff. So that was all kind of quite good. And some of the interactions are kind of quite fun, but sort of between our sort of characters, and we get you know, some kind of fun kind of dialogue and stuff. It's nowhere near as snappy as the kind of obviously the Joss Whedon written dialogue or anything like that, but it's still kind of, again, this seemed like it was a very quick production. So, you know, I give credit where credit's due. But what doesn't work, I mean, if you're not a fan of low budget stuff, this isn't going to change your mind. It's so amateurish and rough around the edges, even though, despite what I've said, I do think, unless you are an ardent kind of B-movie fan, this will just seem too kind of cheap for most. And as I said, some of the stuff here, the comedy, it's amusing at times, but it's never really particularly funny. It's never particularly engaging. The writing is never particularly as strong as anything that it's parodying here. I think the real disservice, though, is just a real lack of characterization. I think because its original incarnation was this web series, it just goes straight in there without really giving you much setup, much kind of like time to get to know any of the characters, and as such, they just feel like they're straight in there with their sort of their kind of character arcs and stuff like that, and we just don't know these people and all these characters, and as such, there's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, on a sort of to root for and stuff like that. So it's very thin in regards to sort of character work ultimately. It is not a particularly kind of like gory affair. I mean, again, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer certainly wasn't, but it does have, you know, maybe it could have led into that to kind of give it a little bit more what you didn't see in the Buffy kind of series and things like that. The story seems a little bit kind of rushed, as I say. The way it just plays out, just under an hour, and as such, it just kind of like tears through a story which could have been more interesting had it been more kind of developed and things like that. The acting's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, it's everyone's playing with the sort of tongue-in-cheek, so you've got to go into that and bear that in mind. But even so, I do think sometimes, you know, the lack of real professionalism here does kind of show through, shall we say. Ultimately, if you are a B-movie fan and you are a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you might want to check it out. I mean, it might be a kind of fun novelty, but it's nothing really more than that ultimately. I think an idea could have been, you know, a little bit more filled out to make it a little bit more satisfying ultimately. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. What were your thoughts of using it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.